they think they wasted it.
I hope not.
We'll see you here next year.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're not a company.
But we recognize potential. We develop it. We use it.
We'll make sure that as your responsibility grows, so will you.
As your ability for leadership grows, so will you.
Working with us, you'll gain self-confidence.
Become a person with a future.
We're not a company.
We're your country.
We're the Marines,
The Army.
the Navy.
The Air Force.
We're the armed forces.
It's a great place to start.
Good day, sunshine. Good day, sunshine. I need to laugh.
We shaped the Mercury Topaz to help it hold on to the road. The way you hold on to your sunshine.
I feel good in a special way. I'm in love and it's a sunny day.
Mercury, the shape you want to be in.
The controversy over manned versus unmanned spaceflight, Monday on ABC's World News Tonight.
Hawaiian Air. You get more than any other Hawaii airline.
Experience for years in the air. For islands, for beaches, more sights to share. Hawaiian Air. Maui, Hawaii, Hawaii, more Hawaiian smiles, more comforts in the air. For Hawaii with more special care. Hawaiian Air.
In 1972,
The photographers.
Reno Hightower threw the most perfect pass in football history. The trouble was, he threw it to Jack Dundee.
You remember, Reno remembers, the whole town remembers.
Okay, I remember.
Now they're out to rewrite history.
You drop that thing again, Jack, your life is over.
The best of times. Rated PG-13. Now at select theaters. Check newspapers.
Liza Minnelli and the Muppets Sunday.
Three and 1/2 hours into the Ironman triathlon. Julie Moss with a 3-minute lead, also battling the steady, energy-draining wind. Her efforts in this sport are pointed towards erasing one of those unique video memories where defeat is what lingers. Like Bingo Bogatai's spectacular crash at Oberstdorf. You remember the moment, but do you remember his name? Like the kid from the University of Minnesota, Brian Meeker. Did you remember him? It was 1982. Julie Moss wobbling down Ali'i Drive, only yards from a victory that was not to be.
I think I could have won if I just walked. Somehow it didn't seem right to walk across the finish line. Pride, ego, whatever. Something got in the way, but I definitely had this idea that I should run across the finish line. Because if someone were to pass me walking, that just was not acceptable. I mean, I could get past running, but I couldn't get past walking.
Julie did not walk. She did not run. She crawled through the darkness, her mind blurred by pain and by second place. Kathleen McCartney was the winner.
As the result, I got passed, on the ground, so it didn't quite work out. Now I would have no problems with walking across the finish line.
What's happened in the last 3 years? Fill in the blanks for me.
I've been a jock. 3 years ago, I got a passport, and I filled every page but one. My last acquisition was my passport stamp to China. So, I mean, I've been all over the world, and it's because of triathlons. It was because of that one race.
It was a naive athlete and free spirit that followed her boyfriend to Hawaii and the triathlon 4 years ago. She decided to enter herself as a fluke. Today, the California girl is a professional triathlete bent on material success. She has the magazine covers, endorsements, and lots of attention. Mainly, though, Julie is trying to win so that everyone can't forget. But she's doing pretty well in the meantime.
I see Julie, and I see what Julie's doing, and I see what some of her close friends are doing. And at this particular time, they're being very successful. They're happy. It's a healthy life. I guess now that I've been living with it almost, it's not so unusual. But I didn't think that 4 years ago.
I think I'm settling down a little bit more. 27. I've got to get out of the sport pretty soon. I mean, the sun's already taken its toll. I've got all these wrinkles and things. So, I don't know. Yeah, there's some changes coming up, but I still have some really important things to accomplish in this sport now before I exit. So, I think that's kind of the hook that keeps everybody into what they're doing. I just want to get to this one point, and then maybe I'll think about doing something else. And that one point always is one step away.
Things have been pretty quiet in the village of Javi ever since the sugar plantation closed, except on Triathlon Day when it is the all-important bike turnaround. This was men's leader Chris Hinshaw whirling past the town theater carrying a 6-minute lead. The sun even shined on it. He was the first that could get ready for the tailwinds and the ride back down the Kohala Hills. On the way, he would pass everyone chasing him. The chase was 52 miles old. It carried past the volcanic slopes of Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa. As Hinshaw prepared for the 60-mile return trip, Banks and Tinley were close behind.
Banks would be the next one to reach Javi, but he was still trudging up the hills in a very high gear. His cadence was slower, and he looked like he was setting himself up for fatigue problems. To make matters worse, his lead over Scott Tinley was only 60 seconds. Tinley continued to chip away. He was aerodynamic, his chin was close to the bar, and his head was down, and he had made up an unbelievable 5 minutes and 7 miles.
So many triathletes you meet almost force you to ask why. Carol Harrington is a successful businesswoman with 2 kids. Yet here she was trying to forget about being homesick to the point of almost giving up. Yes, we were forced to ask, why?
There is an awful lot in me that says, you know, what am I trying to prove? What is this going to prove? What is this going to mean to the rest of my life? And it's been, I've been here 2 weeks, and I'm constant sorting out of how is this going to enrich my life and my children's life and my husband and make my business better. I think if I do this, I think I will honestly feel like I can almost do anything. You know, I am really mediocre at all these things. I'm not a hardcore triathlete like a lot of these people. I had to qualify for this. And I went through a lot of these emotions. And many people said, who would ever leave their family and go off and do their own thing like this? I mean, if my wife ever did exactly what you said, if my wife wanted to do this, I'd tell her to get another husband. And yet there were those people that said to me, hey, you may never have another chance. So, and I might not.
This is for my kids.
Back to Joanne Ernst, second-place woman, 2 minutes behind the leader, Julie Moss. We eavesdropped a little bit.
Go, Joanne. Long ride.
Yep. I'm content to sit, man. Wait for that run.
You look real strong.
Thanks.
You can run her down.
Yep.
Four hours into the race, Danny Banks, in second place for just about 70 miles, was next to succumb to Scott Tinley, who could not relate at all to the contentment of being in third or even in second. Tinley would be content only when he had Hinshaw and his lead. With this move, he had Banks. The driving veteran was 4 minutes behind the less experienced leader, who by then probably felt like a fugitive with the sheriff on his tail.
You just ask for a light beer.
Give me a light.
You never know what you'll get.
Dogs. No, actually, Bud Light.
So if you want the less filling light beer with the first name and taste, ask for Bud Light.
Yours? No.
Because everything else
Give me a light. Showtime.
is just a light.
Hello, Linus. I see your blanket's out for washing. I feel so insecure. Security is why over 43 million people trust Metropolitan to ensure their lives and health and homes and cars and retirement. Does Metropolitan give out blankets? No. But the world-famous Metropolitan Life Representative is the very symbol of security in an uncertain world. You're right. I feel better already. Get Met. It pays.
Change. It's part of doing
business. Now there's a Watts line that keeps up with change. It automatically adjusts to give you our maximum savings on every call. And that's guaranteed. Just like change. Advanced Watts from GTE Sprint. When you've got Sprint, you've got the future on the line.
Tickets, please. Ready for the big vacation?
Now we're flying to one of those spots where you need more books than clothes.
The way you're playing, you need a vacation.
Get a good fare?
Yeah, you can bet on it. Lowest fare around.
Yeah, probably get stranded in Bora Bora.
No. Actually, the lowest fare was on American.
Guess the man's way ahead of you.
Chill.
When you're something special, people know it.
The brightest stars in the NFL together for one final matchup. Super Bowl MVP Richard Dent, Walter Payton, Jim McMahon, Marcus Allen, Bill Sims, and more. The AFC-NFC Pro Bowl at a special time on ABC's Wide World of Sports. Tomorrow.
It is a joyous moment in the Ironman Triathlon when you're the leader with the wind at your back.
Got a tailwind.
Chris Hinshaw was having the ride of his life, but so was the air-cooled machine, Scott Tinley. He showed no sign of weakness, having been on the go for 4.5 hours. That was remarkable. Then there was Paloma Roales Brown, the Spanish interpreter from Seattle. No tailwind could help her. It's been a difficult day, Paloma.
More than difficult. Horrible.
What happened to it?
I don't know. I just, not my day. You could say that. One of those days.
Did so well to get yourself back together for the swim.
Yeah. Swimming has always been the easiest part, plus the marathon. With the bike, I'm totally inexperienced. The bike. This has been an adventure for me. This is the first time. Whatever I finish or not, it's not so important. I'll come back next year.
You will?
Oh, yes. And it will be different.
There was the ocean, the wind, the hills. And slowly they took their toll. They have a way of taking your dream and tossing it at the side of the road. You could see it on the face of Chris Hinshaw, who for the first time began to show the strain of being in the lead and of being chased. There was no such look to Scott Tinley. Every turn of the pedals seemed stronger than the one before.
The women's race had developed much like the men's. Julie Moss had pedaled hard throughout the hilly lava fields, and with a quick stretch and renewed determination, she seemed to be buckling down already for the long, painful marathon ahead. She had fortified herself well by this point with constant intake of bananas, oranges, and liquids, even advising other riders to stuff themselves for the upcoming run. Behind Moss, the ever-cool Ernst was still holding back until the run. We had asked her earlier what made her tick as an athlete.
I think determination and my perfectionism. I'm definitely a perfectionist, which can be a good and a bad thing. I get really down on myself, even when I win races. I always find room for fault, but at the same time, I think that part of my personality pushes me to succeed. I'm really driven.
And she was driven here, less than a mile behind Julie Moss.
It's been a long day already. My swim went better than I'd hoped, even though...
Scott Binder went to school at Nebraska and will soon become an accountant near his home in Denver. As he reads his letter to the Triathlon Selection Committee, you will see he ran every mile for Mom.
During the past 15 months of my life, I've dedicated myself toward the goal of competing in the Ironman. Not only for myself, but for my mother. I realize that this sounds corny and that everyone has a special reason for desiring entry into the Ironman, but please continue to read and consider why my situation is special. At age 42, my mother was hit with cancer of the colon. Surgery at the Mayo Clinic removed part of the colon, but doctors doubted they got all the cancer. 2 years later, at age 44, my mother discovered she was pregnant. Most doctors recommended not having the baby because of the danger to both her and the baby. Mom refused, had the baby, me, and continued to fight on. Now, after 2 artificial hip implants and deterioration of the spine and hands due to arthritis, she continues to be supportive of my athletic endeavors. Not only does she encourage me verbally, but she trains with me. At age 68, she still rides her bike next to me as I run, pushing me towards greater accomplishments. My athletic endeavors are a way for her to enjoy things she can't do due to her physical limitations. I realize that you have many special requests, but please consider my situation and help me to fulfill not only my dream, but more importantly, my mother's dream. Sincerely, Scott H. Binder.
Did your mom say anything to you this morning, Scott?
Just that she loved me. Nothing else.
5 hours, 42 minutes into the day, Chris Hinshaw searched for the right gear to carry him to the end of what was a great bike run. The only problem was that Scott Tinley's pace was better. The lead had fallen to 1.5 minutes. Only 90 seconds between Hinshaw and the man possessed, Scott Tinley. It was time for the marathon.
The sign said to finish, but it was really only the beginning of an important time for Chris Hinshaw. His bike time of 4 hours, 57 minutes, and 50 seconds was the 3rd best in the history of the Ironman. However, the day was 5 hours and 48 minutes old. Tinley rolled into the transition, revealing his experience. His shoes were already loosened, and while he knew he was gaining on Hinshaw, he wasted little time. In fact, his overall time was the fastest ever from the cycling leg. Scott is notorious for his quick changes in the transition area, and that always worried me when I competed against him. He changed on the run. As you can see, he didn't even enter the changing room.
As Chris Hinshaw emerged from the transition with that hat on, he resembled Dave Waddell, one of the 1972 Olympic heroes. You may remember Waddell needed a miracle and got it. Now Hinshaw needed one. Tinley had chopped his lead to 45 seconds with that quick transition trip.
Forget that artsy guy with the beard. Let Rex direct your script.
Forget it.
Look, come on, let
Get it.
We shaped today's Mercury Cougar to help it hold a road, no matter which road you choose. Mercury, the shape you want to be in.
The more things cost, the better they are. That's not always true. Consider Barbasol. Barbasol has as thick and rich a lather as any other leading foam, but Barbasol can cost half as much as the higher-priced foams. Consider also Barbasol Glide Stick Deodorant. It has a fresh, clean scent like any deodorant should, but Barbasol can cost as much as $1 less than the high-priced sticks. Barbasol Shave Cream and Barbasol Glide Stick. Great toiletries for a lot less money.
Enter the world of Timex quartz. Great looks that can take a licking. The Timex Triathlon has an 8-lap memory chronograph. It's for men and women of iron. This Timex sports quartz is water resistant to 100 meters. The Timex Black Max quartz, flat out excitement. The world of Timex quartz is tough to beat.
Tired of those high fuel prices? Well, guess what? They're not getting any lower. Fight back with the Attic Blanket from Owens Corning. It's the most powerful roll of thermal protection you can buy. Before fuel bills put you in the red, get the Attic Blanket and put your house in the pink. Owens Corning, our building products put your house in the pink.
How well we remember the days of Wide World of Sports, the World Heavyweight Championship in 1964, the upstart Cassius Clay against the supposedly unbeatable champ, Sonny Liston. Here he was, the former Olympic light heavyweight champion. He had bragged before the fight, acted strangely, wildly, Incoherently, some people thought. They thought he would be cannon fodder for the fists of Sonny Liston. But in the third round, he was going pretty good. In that round, in fact, he opened a cut under the eye of the champ. A man who many people thought could never be beaten. In the fifth round, however, trouble for Clay. A strange-looking affair. Backing up, covering up, all of a sudden. He later said that the medication that had been applied to the cut under Liston's eye had gotten into his eyes, that he couldn't see very well. Didn't know what was happening. Couldn't see those heavy fists of Sonny Liston. Pushing him away, backing up, all through the round. People wondered what in the world was going on. They wondered again after the sixth round, when suddenly and mysteriously, Liston could not come out for round 7. A wild scene of jubilation that Clay would repeat many times, but not as Cassius Clay. By the following year, he was Muhammad Ali. They met again, the return bout in Maine. Remember this very strange affair? The first round. It would only go to 1 minute and 43 seconds before something happened. Or did it? That was the question. Did the punch really land? Watch now. That was it. Was that a punch that would knock a man to the floor for more than the count of 10? Referee Jersey Joe Walcott didn't realize that the count had gotten to 10. He allowed Liston to get up again, as you will see. Crazy jumping around of now Muhammad Ali. The fight going on, confusion. Walcott being called by Nat Fleischer, ring expert, going over to the side as they began to fight again. But then you'll see Walcott coming back in again. He says, no, the count had gone past 10. It was all over earlier. It's done. It's finished. Ali is still the heavyweight champion of the world in less than a single round. Memories from long ago. A quarter of a century of sports history. That's ABC's Wide World of Sport.
Something Chris Hinshaw cherished was being taken away, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Ever since the turnaround at Javi, he heard the countdown of his lead. 12, then 8 minutes, 6, 5, 3, 1, now 10 yards. Turning around wasn't necessary. The breathing, the footsteps, the cheers. They belonged to Scott Tinley. The display that followed showed just how much respect can be earned in a 6-hour game of cat and mouse. Like that game, this one may have reached its inevitable end. But while it lasted, it was something to watch. Henshaw had to hold on to what he had. Tinley was 22.2 miles from redemption, looking ready for anything he might find along the way. It hadn't taken Tinley very long to make that move. As a matter of fact, the marathon transition at the Kona Surf Hotel was only 4 miles ago. Still, though, Tinley had to face the lava fields again and then the return journey.
Julie Moss came in with a new women's course record on the bike, but this was no time to dwell on minor accomplishments. The bike leg was eons ago already in her mind as she hastened to change to running singlet and shorts. Ernst was 3.5 minutes behind, jaw set with only 2 visions in her head. 1, the tough field behind her, ready to take advantage of any falter, and 2, the more immediate concern, the woman who stood or was about to run between herself and the lead, Julie Moss. Moss had improved her running over the year, but the woman coming in face to face with her now was putting on a ton of pressure.
Physically, Julie Moss had to shake off the effects of that bike run, something Scott Tinley had been doing. Here's Dave Scott on Ali'i Drive.
Scott's about 5 miles into the run. He's trying to get as large a margin as he possibly can before leaving town and approaching the lava fields. He knows that the real race on the marathon starts at about 15 miles. And he knows that at this point, it's just the ability to relax, allow his arms to drop down, shake his legs out. And after an incredible bike leg, he's well on the way to an Ironman record.
And as Tinley put on that show of strength, Joanne Ernst exited the transition area, and Diana Nyad was there.
That was Joanne Ernst going out of here with a big cheer. She's 4 minutes behind Julie Moss. Now, 3 years ago, Julie Moss was in the same position in first place, and I'm sure many of you remember the footage. She came crawling to the finish line and lost. She's out there in the lead, but she knows she has a very fine marathoner behind her, and now the mental side of this Ironman becomes paramount.
The premier players were now competing on foot, while in their own private world, hundreds of others kept pedaling away. Some not quite looking like triathletes. 45-year-old Ray O'Keefe is an actor, a big actor. In Hollywood, he is known for his roles as a tough guy. Interesting that the role he played on that day in Hawaii was very similar in demand.
They were going to shoot a film about Rocky Marciano, and I was going to play Rocky, but I was way out of shape. Because Rocky, his biggest asset was his conditioning. They started running, and then the film fell through finally. He never did it. But I kind of got hooked on running and getting in shape, but then it got a little sporadic, and then I said, I need an incentive.
Eventually, that incentive became the triathlon. And along the way, it should be noted that Ray O'Keefe never lost his sense of humor.
Anybody else go through here yet?
Just a couple of people.
I'll catch him.
By then, Scott Tinley's story had become almost ludicrous. Comfortably in the lead in one of the body's most grueling tests, he decided to test his football skills with his wife and friends. Chris Hinshaw hadn't come out of their duel as mentally crisp. His hold on second place was fragile at best.
You guys can stay with me?
Part of the way.
Thanks.
Pump.
Gotta stay ahead of this guy back here. I'm totally slowed down. Of course, I had 16 minutes. Where's my dad?
Like son, like father, when it came to running. Like father, like son, when it came to asking.
How's Chris look?
Ed Hinshaw, in the early stages of the marathon, would have been a proud man had he known what a battler he had raised, what a sportsman his son was. For as Chris Hinshaw moved along the Queen K Highway, he saw in the distance someone on the way to victory, and he thought the awesome performance of Scott Tinley deserved another salute.
We're not a company, but no company has more pride in what they do, or more pride in how well they do it. We offer you a meaningful and fulfilling future, one that goes far beyond the ordinary, one that brings with it the respect and admiration of Americans everywhere. We're not a company, we're your country. We're the Air Force, the Marines, the Army, the Navy. We're the Armed Forces. It's a great place to start.
Introducing Riunite Spumante. More taste than champagne.
Tomorrow, a family tradition is reborn with an unforgettable motion picture every week. The Disney Sunday movie.
You know, I've been a beer drinker for a bunch of years. Like you, I've seen a lot of beer commercials. There's one beer that people loved before it was even advertised. You see, Coors was kind of the beer at my folks' place. People thought it was different, special. That was true long before there were any jingles or promotions. The product people love, not the hoopla. You think about that. How many products can you say that about? Coors is the one.
Those big shots at the lottery think they can outsmart Lady Luck, just like that. Just because they got this new game 3 cards up, the odds of winning are better than 1 in 5. 1 in 5? That's not odds, that's charity. And then they print 4 million winning tickets. Now everyone is going to be running around Washington screaming, I won, and I'm not even lucky. I knew I should have stayed in Vegas.
Wheel of Fortune, tonight at 7.
Deja vu at the Ironman Triathlon. What had transpired in the men's race was being repeated by the women. 8.5 hours into the day, Julie Moss on a leaky drive, looking back, trying to avoid the inevitable. Joanne Ernst, content earlier to sit in second, was content no longer.
Ernst took long, powerful strides, honing down her prey. But it was common knowledge that Ernst had suffered chronic hamstring problems, limiting her to an average running schedule of a scant 16 miles per week. Julie relinquished the lead. She had to, but she didn't fade, desperately trying not to let the gap widen. Julie Moss could only hope now for a flare-up of those hamstrings somewhere down the road. And a marathoner named Liz Bullman was on both their minds.
There were no more challenges for Scott Tinley. The string of second-place finishes would end, and his relationship to the Ironman would be that of conqueror again. These were moments to savor. He was headed toward a record time with a slick ride on the bike and an unstoppable effort on foot.
I've had a fair amount of success in the run course because I seem to do fairly well in the heat, so that's to my advantage. But again, you know, especially in the past couple years, I've sold myself short on the race, and I've given up in the run course and not done as well as I could have, and that's one of the reasons I'm back to this year, is to prove to myself that I can go out there and I can do it and not sell myself short.
Less than 1 mile to go to the finish line. Chris Hinshaw's day was far from over. A burst of late afternoon sun made it warm and humid again, and he did his best to keep cool, not knowing of the efforts of 33-year-old Karl Kupferschmidt, a native of the small village of Arosa, Switzerland. His sleek body seemed to be gliding as it went by one-time second-place holder Danny Banks to gain fourth. It was a sight that took a little while to get used to for Banks. A European was making a mark where few European marks had been made before. Kupferschmidt, amazingly 308th out of the water, was showing off his stamina, which he earned greatly running in the Alps. And minutes later, Hannes Blaschke of West Germany, another success from across the ocean, lost his third-place standing. Maybe this was the little salute he issued to farmers on those training runs in Arosa. Hinshaw was 14 minutes ahead. The Ironman returned to its beginnings as it had each year for the finish, to the pier at Kailua and the small beach where the swimmers began at 7 a.m. This was Scott Tinley, cheering himself and cracking that veneer of concentration that he exhibited all day. Dave Scott, is there a better feeling in the